of all your records, I like this one the best. I like it because, honestly, it scares me on a whole different level and brings up things for me, and maybe it just mirrors things for me that, are much more frightening than the things that go bump, the things that the self-annihilation. So, I think
I think that's what I like about movies and books, the ones that are psychological and not the obvious, the whole idea of something like Rosemary's Baby, when you don't see the baby, that's really when it's in your head. And I think that I tapped into a part of me that I was afraid to deal with. So when you hear it, I don't know how other people are going to feel when they hear it, but when I listen to this record, and I never really listen to my records because it's a real process to make it, and then you end up performing it, and it's very rare that I listen to something, but I listen to this record, and it makes me feel the way that I needed to feel. So I think I probably needed to say the stuff to me the most. In another way, a lot of the records that I listen to most, whether it's Purple Rain or Diamond Dogs or, Tattoo You, a lot of these records come in a point in a lot of my favorite artists' careers that is essentially where I'm at, or I haven't even got to yet. And they're some of the strongest material. So I was in a position where I thought, maybe I've said everything. I don't know what to say anymore, because a lot of the things that I've pointed out in the past are obvious to everyone now, and there's not really any reason to say them again.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of art and bands and things that have in some way been changed enough that they do things that when I did them, they were a little bit too offensive, and when David Bowie and Alice Cooper did them in their time, it was a little too offensive. And now when they do it, it doesn't have the heart behind it.
Yeah.
But I almost felt, why should I really do this anymore? And I didn't understand that I had to do the most simple thing and turn the magnifying glass onto myself.
Oh no, it's so true, because I think you did, and actually what those artists that you like did in the same kind of way, same kind of trajectory. I think you spent maybe the first 4 records defining yourself out there and what you believed in, but it was more cerebral. This one is not cerebral. This one is you took a scalpel and you opened up your guts and you poured them out, It's like this is a crisis point record, and what sounds better than pain, really? Because there's no filter.
Well, I think that what I identify with most is tragedy historically, starting with Shakespeare and with any of the mythologies that I didn't even choose as subject matter. It was just what was in my head on this record. Watching a movie like Bonnie and Clyde, the next day waking up and writing Putting Holes in Happiness. That was that. I was affected that immediately, and it's a different way of writing for me. I haven't ever written in the way that I would write a letter, or I would write God forbid, a poem or something.
Wait, so what was different about your creative process this time? Because you stayed with it, because it came from the subconscious? Like, what made this different?
I was trying to make this record, and in some ways, maybe I didn't want to succeed at it for the greater part of that year. And it was not until things became really, really bad in my personal life and in my living situation where I didn't want to, in the same way Lewis Carroll, he never slept. I didn't want to go to sleep because I didn't want to wake up, because waking up seemed so terrible.
Yeah.
I'm speaking sort of in a metaphorical sense or figurative way, but in a little bit of a literal sense, that I was very lost, and it was something as simple as Tim Skold, who probably spent the most time with me of anyone, because I saw him on a regular basis, but our friendship is quite different than other people who would call each other best friends. He's Swedish, so he has a different demeanor that I understand quite well, but other people might think he's cold or uncaring. Mm-hmm. And it's just the way that he relates. So for us together, he's very much order and regiment, and I'm chaos and, instant impulse. And he said to me, well, why don't you write about what you're going through or what you feel? Because I couldn't really explain it to anybody so much in a conversation or in words. And it was that simple that he said that, and I started figuring out an entire new approach. And I had maybe 15 or 20 notebooks filled chaotically with different writings. I even put a very small snippet in the artwork to the album, but it wouldn't really be understood unless you saw them all together, because it's a little eccentric, to say the least.
Yeah.
But because I lose things, and I'll write an idea, and it might go across 4 notebooks as I'm trying to find the right one. So I would just lay them all out, and in some ways it was almost like seeing some sort of autopsy of my mind in front of me. And I would pull or be, inspired by different pieces of it, almost in a William S. Burroughs sort of cut and paste sense, but completely different. And I spent most of my time singing on the floor on my back with a ribbon microphone, which isn't meant to be held in your hand. And, it sounded raw, and anybody who was concerned about making something technically and proper, emotionless, would have complained about it. But I thought it sounded very appropriate because it was the only way I wanted to do it at the time, and I wouldn't have ever dreamed of going back and trying to fix anything, because it sounded like I felt.
When you were looking at all your notebooks, did you see a theme emerging about what you were going through?
I don't think that I really saw something so specific as that until I got to the end, and I could see, but I was too close to it. So when we did Eat Me, Drink Me, mm-hmm. the song's very narrative in a strange way, and it wasn't as calculated as me trying to tie everything together as a concept record, but in a sense, it ends up being maybe the most the strongest and most complicated concept record that I've ever approached, but it was right there in front of me. The story that I needed to tell was about myself, and not manipulated into a metaphor for the first time. And that song, when we finished it, there was a debate, I think, for maybe a few moments whether it should be first or last, and I think simply because of the lyric that it ends on, it needed to be last. And I knew when we did If I Was Your Vampire on Christmas morning at 6 a.m. when I wrote it, mm-hmm. it had to be first, because it was really the song that made me realize this was definitely going to be a record, and there was no question about it.